website to be viewed as soon as is practicable following the meeting. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not to be used. We'll also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. Officers too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. We will now proceed to agenda business. And the first item is to receive apologies for absence from members, and I can see that all members of the Cabinet are present, as are all members of the Corporate Management Board. So we will now receive any declarations of a personal or prejudicial interest from members and officers in accordance with the provisions of the Members' Code of Conduct adopted by this authority in September 2008. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No, and of course, if you do identify an interest during the course of the meeting, please indicate at that point. We have next on the agenda the minutes of the meetings of Cabinet held on the 17th of January and the 7th of February. Can I have a mover that they are a true and accurate record of those meetings, please? Thank you, Councillor Farr.
Second,
and thank you, Deputy Leader, for seconding. Everyone in agreement?
Yep.
Thank you, colleagues. We'll now receive the first report on today's agenda, and that is a report on the redevelopment of Cosy Corner in Porthcawl, and it is from the Corporate Director for Communities. So over to you, please, Janine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director for Communities. So the purpose of the report in front of you today, Cabinet, is to approve to modify the Cosy Corner construction works contract in accordance with Rule 3.3.6 of our CPL rules, the Council's contract procedure rules. The background to this report has been well rehearsed through a number of previous Cabinet reports. So before I go through the report, I just want to draw your attention to some correspondence we've received recently from Mr. Mike Clark, who is a former councillor and a member of the now dissolved Credu charity, to clarify a few points in the report. So first of all, I'd like to say, Leader and Cabinet, that Credu did not have a lease for this site, but they did have an agreement to lease. And in that agreement to lease, there were varying conditions attached. So BCBC terminated this agreement to lease when Credu went into administration, and this is accurately reflected in the report in paragraph 3.1. But I would also like to explain that this agreement to lease is the main narrative within the report. However, there is an omission in paragraph 4.2, which states lease relinquishment, and of course it should read agreement to lease relinquishment, and this will be minuted for amendment going forward. Now, BCBC did take back possession of the Cosy Corner site on the 5th of November 2020, when we were advised that Credu had gone into administration, and this is set out in your report in paragraph 3.1. Now, you're not required to have a lease to be considered as having possession of a site. Under a licence to enter the site, this was granted to Credu by BCBC hoardings were erected along with the contractors' cabins, and the construction contract commenced. So the Cabinet report is written, therefore, today as a statement of fact. We will correct that one omission, and it's from the events following Creddy going into administration. So it's from the 5th of November onwards that BCBC has responsibility, not before leader. So the report will concentrate on the foregoing position. So if we turn back to the report then and look at the current situation that we find ourselves in August 2020, John Weaver Construction began mobilisation onto the site. They were our preferred contractors, and the development of the Cosy Corner site commenced. Now, as part of the development, BCBC commissioned the services of specialist environmental scientists to undertake further geo-environmental and geotechnical assessments of the ground conditions. Now, assessments had been carried out previously, but this assessment that we undertook was far more intrusive survey that would ratify the results of the previous assessments and also ensure that the ground conditions remained suitable for the proposed development, the BCBC development. Now, a report was put together which made recommendations for specialist advice to be sought following detection of contamination on the site. This included asbestos, and particularly in the southern portion of the site. Now, where possible, the workforce have been focusing, the John Weaver contractors have been focusing their efforts on the construction of the building itself, while further assessment was undertaken on the contaminants on the site, and that remediation plan was devised. Now, the reason this was critical is we need to ensure that we get practical completion of that building by the end of May this year, end of May 23, because we've secured that £1 million WEFO grant monies against practical completion. So what we have done now is ask the contractor to concentrate on that proportion of the contract. So certain remediation works associated with testing and the removal of unsuitable materials have been instructed to address the contamination. So what I would say there is the contaminated pieces of asbestos have been removed. And the existing contract was modified to do that in line with the Contract Procedure Rule 3.3.6. Now, the value of that modification was 100,000, and it was authorised by myself in accordance with the Council's scheme of delegation. However, a number of issues have conflated now on the site. The period of time we spent testing and clarifying the exact nature of the contamination have resulted in delays, unfortunately. And this has been compounded by awaiting approvals from Welsh Water, much longer than expected, and associated design changes to do with the pumping station on the site. Now, both of these things have resulted in a period of 12-week contractor costs, unfortunately, unavoidable. In addition, the remediation strategy to deal with the contaminants has stated that about 2,000 tonnes, approximate 2,000 tonnes of imported soil is needed to bring the site to formation level and replace materials on the site that are deemed unsuitable as a result of potential asbestos contamination. So we need to do those associated groundworks and the introduction of a separate layer membrane. Look, it's essential that the site is cleared of all legacy contamination. And this would have been the case whoever had chosen to bring this site forward for development. And once identified, items such as asbestos, that contamination has to be dealt with as specified by those specialist environmental consultants. So as a result of all this has created a need to modify that construction works contract to ensure that the completion of the building is prioritised first, to enable prospective tenants to access and fit out sooner, and to support those requirements of the funder, to support the fact we get it complete by the 31st of May. And what I would also add at this point is we've had an extraordinary demand from businesses in the local community to take up places in the Cosy Corner development. It really has been overwhelming how many people really want to be part of this. So the purpose of the Cabinet report today, Leader and Cabinet, is to seek to modify that construction works contract in line with the Contract Procedure Rule 3.3.6. This will allow officers to authorise what is currently considered to be the full and remaining packages of works required at this time to resolve the issues that have arisen and to complete the works to a value of no greater than £265,790. And that's the value of the funding still available within the capital envelope that is within the Council's capital programme. So we're still within that envelope. It is considered that this additional work, as I've described, can be achieved well within the budget, within the capital programme. The exact amount, though, will not be known until the soil removal and replacement is complete. Because at this point in time, we have an approximation of 2,000 tonnes, and we could have minor variations on that. It could be more, it could be less, but there's minimal risk, and we think we can accommodate that. So this, taken with the previous modification, the value at 100,000, under the decision, the delegated decision, will result in a revised contract value of no greater than 2.804394 million. The proposed modification will not increase the value of the contract in excess of 15% of the original value, so will result in a revised contract of no greater than 2.8 million, which we've talked about. So it is in line with our corporate procurement regulations. I mean, any further delay on the programme would potentially cause a greater financial uplift to the project in the form of contract preliminaries, and also may extend the contract further. In addition, very important is that we complete the grant, complete the building in time to get that European grant. But it must be clear, however, that the request to increase this works contract still falls within the capital programme approved by Council on the 1st of March this year. Therefore, there are no further monies required to support this request. So please, Cabinet, could I take you to section 9 of the report and authorise the modifications to the construction contract as we have discussed. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Janine, and I will bring in the Cabinet member, Councillor Farr, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Janine, for the report. And it is important that we get the work done in time. I just want to ask a couple of questions, Janine, if that's okay. In the report, you've said that that there was site inspection carried out and some of the contaminated soil was moved. So where did this contaminated soil come from, please?
Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Farr. Yeah, we carried out a number of surveys. The first survey that we carried out examined the site as far as we could, and we found asbestos itself present in the site. So the asbestos was removed from the site at the time, and that was the 100,000 delegated power piece. We then removed the cabins that were placed on the site at the southern end of the site. And once we removed the cabins, we did find a little bit more asbestos in that area, and that was removed. But now, because of the degree of asbestos we found, and because it covers the majority of the site, because we did some very intrusive survey work, we now have to mitigate. And the mitigation is to remove 2,000 tonnes of soil on the site that could be still contaminated, take that away and bring back fresh soil onto the site. And that is the additional work that we need to do as a result of this. Now, it was right and proper that we did a very intensive asbestos survey of this site. But of course, when you do that intrusive survey, there is a chance that you do find materials, which we have. But we've got plans to have a community facility there, to have a children's playground area there, to have, for the enjoyment of our community at large. So it was incredibly important we made sure this site was safe. So as a result of those surveys, unfortunately, we found additional asbestos, and we now have to do the soil changeover. But that will mean we have all legacy contamination removed and a very safe site for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Farr, please.
Yeah, thank you, Janine, and I think I agree. It is really important that we have a safe area for residents and children and visitors. Can I formally move the report, please, Leader?
Thank you, Councillor Farr. Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much. Janine, you referenced that we took over the site in October 2020. I'm assuming that those building contractors that were on site previously also did some surveys, and they must have found some works, so they haven't carried out those works?
Thanks, Deputy Leader. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. I do believe that the previous people who were on the site, Credi, had environmental surveys undertaken back in 2019, and they identified 2 areas on that site where there was possible asbestos contamination. But they did that survey work back in 2016. So when our contractor came onto the site last summer, August 22, they didn't choose to use those surveys. We instructed them to do further surveys, more intrusive surveys, and as a result of that, we found a much larger amount of contamination throughout the site, and have mitigated that with the soil removal. So there were surveys done, but we 6 years later we redid the surveys and we did more intrusive surveys. So that's a result.
Thank you, Janine. Did you want to come back in,
Yes,
Deputy
please,
Leader?
Leader.
Please do then.
So I'm having a bit of trouble understanding this, and that's only because if there were surveys done, I would have expected any contractor to remediate the site before they started any works. And I'm aware that the Sea Cadets temporary porter cabin was there. When did that actually go on the site? Was that in between one person taking over the site before we took it over? How did that come about? Because I'm aware that part of the asbestos problems were underneath this site.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Janine, please.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. The survey work undertaken by Credi was back in 2016, and between 2016 and 19 was when the cabin was located by the Sea Cadets onto that site. When we took over the site, the cabin was there. I've asked my corporate landlord team to find out when exactly the cabins were sited, but it was before the construction commenced by Credi on the site.
That answers your question.
I am happy to second that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader, and apologies to anyone present if I sound a bit croaky today, as many of you might be aware, I seem to have contracted COVID. But I just wanted to say, first of all, from a future generations point of view, I think we can all say how thankful we should be that we did decide to undertake further surveys, because we all know the terrible effects that asbestos can have if disturbed. And I think we should all be very thankful that in terms of developing this site properly and for future use, that we have undertaken that work and that we are making sure that that site is safe. Just a quick question from me, Janine. It's quite a simple one. I know that some members in previous discussions with regards to envelopes and things being in budget have perhaps become slightly confused about the difference between what is in budget and in envelope and over budget. So I was just wondering if the officer could perhaps explain in as simple terms as possible the difference between something being over budget and under budget and within the envelope. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Good, and I'm sure the officer can do that in very simple terms. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Good. Well, I'll give it a go. So what we have is a capital allocation within the capital programme, and that's what we call the envelope. And the funding envelope for Cosy Corner is circa £3 million, and that sits in the capital programme. Now, the contract uplift today is 2.8 million. So that is how much the contract is let to, and then the envelope, the total amount of money that we have is 3 million. So while the contract is uplifted, we still have enough money to be able to afford the project. Now, that's not to say that we would want to use all of that capital allocation. When we put those capital allocations in, it's to cover what we think the project may cost and does include contingencies, and it also includes costs for feasibility and specialist advice, etc. So we don't want to go up to the ceiling of what's in that capital programme. So the contract we have is 2.8 million, but it is now within that allocation, that envelope that sits within the capital programme. So I hope that has explained it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Janine. I can see that Councillor Williams would like to come in. Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Well, as a Cabinet Member for Corporate Landlord and, of course, the Health and Safety Champion, I'm happy to support this report. It's vitally important that members of the public have absolute confidence in the council that they do their job properly and as expected. I think this is a very exciting project for Cozy Corner and Porthcawl. It shows a real commitment from this administration to make Porthcawl a destination of choice in the county borough, it's really critically important that people have or that residents have confidence that if we find a problem, we would put it right. And we've drawn a line under whatever's gone on before. That's not what we're here for this afternoon. And this will be an exciting project going forward. So I'm happy to support the report, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. And I'm just as excited as you are. And I know every Cabinet Member and every member will be. This is a flagship project in a very high profile and prominent location in Porthcawl. And it is just one of the many projects that we have underway in the town, and I'm particularly heartened to hear publicly that we have so much interest in the 5 retail units that are planned for the site. That will, of course, create new jobs in the town, and we also will be having new public toilets at Cozy Corner and new changing facilities for users of the nearby marina. I know that will be an important part of the development and us continuing to attract so many visitors and users of the marina. And of course then there's the public space that will be used for staging public and community events as well. Can you just confirm that we are on track, that progress is well underway on site currently, and we are confident about being able to open the site to the public within those timescales? Thank you, Janine.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, we're on track to complete the building itself. If you've ever been down to Porthcawl lately, it's wonderful actually to see the building springing up. We are in the stage where we're looking to fit out the units inside. We're getting to the tail end. The building will be complete by the 31st of May, so that we can claim that £1 million from WEFO. And then what we will do is turn our attention to the landscaping and the children's play piece. But we're hoping that we can get that finished by the summer to open that up. So what we will do is we'll twin track the works. So on the 31st of May, when the site is, the building is ready, we will invite those new occupiers, whoever they may be when we choose, to come in and fit out their units while we're undertaking the landscaping. So when the landscaping is ready, the businesses will be ready to operate, and we should be able to, in the summer, open both together. So it's important to twin track the two now to make sure that we have the businesses ready as well as the landscaping. Thank you, Leader.
And that will be another boost for businesses and the town of Porthcawl, with the work underway on the food store, with the new metro link, the completion of the Eastern Promenade Sea defences. Yet another improvement to the town of Porthcawl. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank an officer who will be leaving the authority this month, and who authored this report and has been very involved in this exciting development for the town, and many of the other exciting developments that have taken place in Porthcawl, not least, of course, the redevelopment of the harbour as a modern marina that is so popular, and that is Sean Warrington, our Destination Management and Coastal Operations team leader. He has been instrumental in so much of the regeneration in Porthcawl, and I wanted to personally thank him for all his work and his efforts. He's moving on to pastures new. He's actually been headhunted by another organisation, and that reflects his capability. So please pass on thanks from myself and all Cabinet colleagues. He will be a loss to the organisation. So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please, colleagues? Thank you. We'll now receive the second report of the Corporate Director for Communities, and that is on the Code of Practice and Risk-Based Approach to Highways Management. Over to you, please, Jane.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This is quite a technical report, so I will do my very best to simplify it for us today. But in essence, what we have here is the purpose is to obtain your approval today, Cabinet, for a revised safety inspection regime based on the recommendations of a number of people. The UK Roads Liaison Group updated its code of practice, and there's also been an All Wales review and a standardisation by the County Surveyor Society of Wales to align with an All Wales approach to highway maintenance. So in essence, what this is in front of you today is a standardisation of highway inspections and highway maintenance for all local authorities in Wales. So let me give you a little bit of background, Leader, before I go into the specifics. So as a highway authority, Bridgend, we've got a duty under Section 41 of the Highway Act to maintain all public adopted highways. Now, paragraph 3.2 of your report sets out the vast amount of highway assets that we have in the borough, which we have a duty to maintain. And as well as the obvious, nearly 800 kilometres of carriageway, we've got footway, road gullies, road bridges, subways. As well as that, we have over 20,000 street lights, 283 bus shelters, and also 35 cattle grids. So there's an exhaustive list there. I won't go into it, but it's a wide range of assets that we own. Now, a failure to maintain these will result in damage, could potentially lead to legal action against the highway authority. So it's very important that we retain these assets in a good condition. Now, regular inspections are carried out by on all of these highway assets by our teams. And the purpose of such inspection is, of course, to ensure as far as reasonably practical that the highway asset is safe for use. Now, the last significant review of the Code of Practice for Highway Maintenance was back in 2005, and we accepted that as a council and as a cabinet on the 12th of December 2006. So this revised code that we now have in front of us was published back in 2016. But the CSSW have revised that code even further and published a risk-based methodology. And in essence, they're now asking all local authorities to adopt this. So if I take you to the current situation, and I'll try to explain the differences between what we currently do and what we're proposing to do. So paragraph 4.2 of your report sets out what our current inspection regime has been since 2005. And what you will see is that roads are categorised into distributor roads, secondary distributor roads, etc., based on the amount of traffic flow they have. And we also have footways have assessments as well. Now, if I take you to paragraph 4.3, these tables here set out what the new inspection regime will be as recommended by the CSSW Code of Practice. Now, what I will say is that the middle section of these tables is traffic volume band, and that's based on the average daily flow of traffic, determines the category of road. So for instance, if we have a main distributor road throughout our borough, it has between 10 to 20,000 vehicles a day flowing on that road, which makes it a main distributor road. If it's a secondary distributor, it's less, it's 5 to 10,000, etc. And it's all set out in the table. But now the only difference in this table, okay, is the main distributor roads, those that have between 10 to 20,000 flows of traffic a day, will now be inspected monthly. They were previously inspected 3 monthly, so that will be inspected monthly going forward. All the other categories stay the same. But there is a new category added for minor roads, CH5, and we haven't done those before, and that's minor roads that have less than 200 movements of cars a day, and that'll be reactive. When we look at the footways, the only change here is a new category of road has been added. Right at the bottom, little used rural footways. That's a new category. Apart from that, everything else stays the same and the inspection regime shall be the same. So in essence, if we look at what we have been doing to what we are doing, the only thing that changes is those main distributor roads will now be examined monthly instead of 3 monthly. Now we also have a defect intervention levels, and what this means is how often we go out and we look at defects on carriageways and footways. Now, the intervention level of risk identifies 2 categories. Those faults that are safety critical and those that are just maintenance. Now, safety critical defects require very prompt attention. Things such as severe potholing, dislodged manholes, gratings and curbs. We have to make those safe. Now, a repair, either permanent or temporary, should be carried out within 24 hours. And that is what we're aiming to do. That is what we usually do, and that is what we will do under this code going forward. Now, maintenance defects are those that do not require immediate attention, but that should be repaired in a specific framework. Now, the code identifies you should do a maintenance defect within 28 days to stop them deteriorating further. Currently, within Bridgend, we attend to those on average within 10 days. And that's what is our current working practice. So this is asking within 28 days, and we're well within that with our 10-day regime. Now, details of the specific intervention levels for both those safety critical and those maintenance defects is shown in Appendix A. Now, paragraphs 4.5.7 to 4.5.10 of this report provide very technical details about why road repairs within those stated parameters are important. But I'm going to assume for the purposes of today's meeting that you've read through those areas, Leader. So what are the financial implications here? Well, whilst the revised code does have implications for additional inspections, we consider that our current staffing structure will be able to manage this increase in frequency. And it's not envisaged that these revised frequencies will increase demand on the level of repair work over current resources. However, we will monitor this going forward. So please may I take you to the recommendation in section 9, Leader, recommend that we approve the implementation of this new safety inspection frequency and defect intervention criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Spanzik, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Janine, for the report. I'm not going to try to repeat the title of the report. It's a long one. Some interesting facts there, and I think it's come up in a previous meeting, the actual length of our carriageways on paragraph 3.2, 799 kilometres of carriageway and 883 kilometres of footway. I think in a previous report somewhere, it stated that was longer than the distance here to John O'Groats. Just puts a perspective on the type of scale of maintenance we have to undertake. I welcome standardising across Wales of this inspection regime. There's just one anomaly, I think, though, and it's occurred to me now when you were talking about the minor roads, that the new addition CH5, so less than 200 traffic occasions, that's reactive. When we look at the chart below, little used rural footways in a similar categories, roads less than 100, that's identified at 12 months. So it's a strange way of saying we should do the little used rural footways at 12 months, but reactive to the minor roads, which you could argue are similar categories, get one. So we could, if we want to, still do that annually, perhaps. I find that a bit of an anomaly in sort of the analysis of why one is reactive and one's 12 months for the minor. But that's a minor point for a minor road, a minor footway, perhaps. But yeah, great report. It's good at the standard we are spending and investing in our highways capital programme each year, and we'll continue to do so. And I would like to move the report and the recommendation in paragraph 9.1.
Thank you, Councillor Spanzik. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you had there, Councillor Spanswick, and I think that your suggestion is a good one, and that we should ensure that those little used rural footways and our minor roads get that inspection annually. And I'm sure the team would be happy to do that. The recommendation is reactive, but I'm sure we can improve on that. Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Deputy Leaders next, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Only one quick question for me, Janine, because I'm aware that this is a public meeting. One of the things that we get tackled and challenged about regularly is the state of our roads, particularly potholes, or even when new work is done and it appears substandard. Could you explain to me, please, what happens if we're not happy with some of the work, please, for residents' benefit? Thanks very much.
Thanks, Deputy Leader. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. That is a very good question because, of course, we have contractors who undertake this work for us. We need to ensure that it's up to an adoptable standard. So the first thing we do is we have inspections. So once work is carried out, we have an inspector come out and sign off the work. And there have been occasions where the work is not to the standard we require, and we ask for it to be redone. I think there's an example of such down at Pyle near the garden centre. A road had to be resurfaced. There was a delay in getting the white lining down on the road, and that's as a result of defective work we wanted improved. We also have what we call a defects liability period. So if a road is laid and there are defects that come into the first 3 months of use of that road, we can look to bring the contractor back and fix the issues there. Of course, sometimes we have instances where roads are signed off and within 24 to 48 hours defects happen. Sometimes that does happen, but please be assured that the inspectors will always, as part of this regime, especially on main routes, check those roads regularly. And we have got an ability to recall contractors to come back. Yeah.
Thanks, Janine. That is reassuring. Deputy Leader, please.
Only to clarify, this is at no cost to us because that would be the biggest contentious issue out there. Thanks very much, and I'm happy to second the report, Leader.
Janine, please. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, no cost to us, Deputy Leader. The defects are made good by the contractor. Thanks.
I think it's also important to make the point at this stage, as it's been raised, is that we're not the only organisation that undertakes works on our highways. In fact, more often than not, it will be other organisations, statutory undertakers and contractors on their behalf undertaking that work. And of course, we will also carefully monitor their work as well and take it up with those organisations as well. Councillor Blundell is next, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thanks, Janine, for the report. I just wanted to clarify something. On the top of page 36, it talks about how you put each road into a category, main distributor, second distributor. But it says 10,000 to 20,000 units. How do we calculate that? I'm assuming we don't have an officer there with a clicker clicking how many cars go past someone's house.
Thank you, Councillor Blundell. Janine, please.
Thank you. Well, that's how they used to do it back in the day, Councillor Blundell. You're absolutely correct. They did. I used to have students out there in the main counting traffic. I know I did that when I was in university. No, these days what you have is, if you've ever seen a wire running across the road, and there's a box that's normally chained up to a street light. That is how we count traffic these days. So we put the wires out quite regularly around the borough to look at the flows of traffic, and also we use it for traffic management with traffic lights. If people report to us that traffic lights aren't as effective as they should be, we put out the wires to monitor the flows in each direction, and sometimes we also go out and observe as well. But in general, if you see those wires across the road with a little silver box chained up to a street light, is generally counting traffic flows. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. So the recommendation's been moved. Seconded. Is everyone in agreement with the recommendation, please? Thank you. Colleagues, we'll now receive the third report of the Corporate Director for Communities, and that is on proposals to consult on a public space protection order for the control of dogs. Janine, please.
Well, from the sublime to the ridiculous today, your leader, from cosy corner through to traffic to public protection orders today. Whole range. Apologies for the range of things in front of you. So the purpose of the report today, Cabinet, is to seek your approval to consult with the Police and Crime Commissioner and other relevant bodies in relation to the creation of a Public Space Protection Order, a PSPO, relating to dog control in our county, and for Cabinet to note the outcome of the consultation, and we'll report that back to you in due course. So just for background, if I may, Leader, the background of the report sets out the provisions from the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act back in 2014. And antisocial behaviour, really, in its broadest terms, describes day-to-day incidents of crime, nuisance, disorder that make people's lives a misery. And this can be anything from litter and vandalism to public drunkenness or aggressive dogs. And it can also be things like noisy or abusive neighbours. So such a wide range of behaviours means that the responsibility for dealing with antisocial behaviour is shared between a number of agencies, particularly the police, but also councils and social landlords. Now, paragraph 3.2 of the report sets out the 6 tools that are available for responsible bodies from that 2014 Act. And the last one that you see on that list there is Public Spaces Protection Orders. Now, the previous PSPO that we had in Bridgend Council was enacted on the 18th of June 2019, and it related to the control of alcohol and the restriction of access to public space and dog control. However, that expired on the 18th of June 2022, and so this is us now bringing that dog control PSPO back forward to you. So the PSPO is an effective deterrent to deal with particular nuisances or problems in an area where you do get that detriment to your quality of life. And the PSPO for dog control will enable officers from Bridgend Council to give direction in regard to dogs that are off lead, dogs that are causing nuisance in a public place, and it also includes dog fouling and other related issues. Now, the previous PSPO enabled the council to take preventative enforcement action in public places, and the detail below I'm going to go through in your report from section 3.9 is what it is we're proposing with regard to dog control. Now, this dog control order will relate to all public spaces throughout the borough, publicly accessible spaces, and it imposes the following conditions on that use of land. That persons within these areas will collect and dispose of dog feces by removing it, putting it into a bag, and then leaving it in a responsible place such as a litter bin or taking it home. The persons within this area who have dogs within their control must carry bags to dispose of dog feces. And the persons within this area, when requested to do so by an authorised officer, must place your dog in control on a lead if it's considered that that dog is causing a nuisance in a public area. Now, for clarity, this PSPO relates to all public spaces. So it will be all parks, all spaces, such as walking down the main streets and pavements. It relates to things like beaches, nature reserves. So the PSP does not restrict dogs from being off lead, but what if requested by an authorised officer, if it's considered your dog is being a nuisance, dogs will be requested to be placed on lead. Now, before the council can make, extend or vary this PSPO, there's a set procedure set down by statute which must be followed. It's necessary for us to consult with a number of people, including the Chief of the Police and the local policing body for the area, and community representatives of the authority think it's appropriate to work with. Also, the owners or occupiers of land, which doesn't sit within the local authority's control. Now, if approved, the statutory consultation will commence in early April and it will continue for 12 weeks. The consultation will seek the public's views on the creation of the PSPO regarding dog control in Bridgend. Now, this PSPO will not relate to disabled persons as defined by the Equality Act 2010, where a person suffers from a disability which would prevent them from collecting dog faeces. And all town and community councils in the areas covered by the PSPO will be notified. And in paragraph 4.6 of your report, there's a list of those that we will be consulting directly via letter. We will also have an online survey available on the BCBC website, and this will be promoted via social media platforms to individuals who live, work or visit Bridgend. So please may I take you to the recommendation in section 9, Leader and Cabinet, to recommend to give approval for the public consultation to commence on that PSPO, Public Space Protection Order, and for Cabinet to note the outcome of the consultation will come back and be reported to you in due course. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Janine. Councillor Spanzik, please.
Thank you, Leader. This report, thank you, Jean. If you just clarify one point, though, we did mention beaches, because there is separate legislation, because we have beaches in the area in the summer period, I think it's May to September, where the dogs are not allowed full stop. That's a slightly different process there, but it's great to have these three categories where dogs can be controlled and people have to carry means to remove dog faeces as well as keeping them under control. And you've made it clear that it's not just parks and green spaces, it's all public spaces across the county borough. The sooner we can get this in, the better, but this is the start of the consultation process, except we need to do that first. Albeit that's 12 weeks, so that's 3 months away, so we're going to be into April, May, June, July. It'd be nice to try and get this back to Cabinet as soon as we can after the consultation process to try and get it in for maybe the latter part of the summer. Because as I understand it now, currently we cannot deal with people not controlling their dogs or depositing dog faeces or not picking up after them, which is a bit of a disappointing situation we're in the moment. We can't do that. So the sooner we get this in place, hopefully the public will accept it. Well, they do accept, I'm sure there's a need for this. Most people, the majority of dog owners are responsible. It's just that minority that needs this type of order in place, which I take it there will be a fixed penalty notice attached to this if it is implemented and people are found not comply with the order. Thank you. And I'd move the recommendation, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Spanzik, and thank you for the work you and officers have undertaken on this important initiative. Janine, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yes, you're right, Councillor Spanswick. When we talk about beaches, a lot of beaches, dogs are prohibited during the summer months, but they can go on in the winter months, and of course this would apply to that area. But the Councillor Spanswick refers to the fixed penalty notice, and what I've been informed by the team today that should we see a dog fouling and the owner doesn't pick it up or doesn't have bags in place, then the fixed penalty notice can be issued for it's £100 for that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Janine, and of course we will make that clear in the consultation with the public that is the proposal, and that will be the sanction. Deputy Leader, please.
Thanks very much, Leader. I'm happy to second the report. Just one question for Janine, and that is, are residents able to send in video footage? Which sounds a bit ridiculous, so that officers can issue them with a fixed penalty notice, particularly if a dog dirties outside their premises and they have one of those video doorbell. They seem to pick up everything nowadays.
Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. I have asked this of the team, and we do need to take some legal advice on this one, because we have had instances previously where we've had video evidence sent in of other things happening in the borough. So what we would say is that we need to clearly define that the person that has the dog, or who they are, in order that we can take any action. And I think it's dependent on fact and degree, really, whether they can be clearly identified, whether the animal is literally, dare I say, caught in the act on the video, and whether we can see that the owner does leave and doesn't make any attempt to remove, and we can clearly identify who they are. So there's quite a few caveats to that one, but I don't think it's a no, but I think it depends on how clear the video evidence is. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader, and I'm sure we'll get that confirmation once that legal advice has been given. Just a question from me, Janine, about that definition of public space. And you refer to that in the report as being wide, and it is indeed very wide. And the Cabinet Member for Communities has already referenced beaches along our coast, but there are other areas, and I wanted to specifically ask for you to clarify, confirm the status of parks and playing fields that have been transferred to community organisations through the community asset transfer process, and indeed those parks and playing fields that are managed, continue to be managed by the authority, and also whether or not this will apply to nature reserves and also to common land as well. And I'm sure we'll do some specific work with owners of land that is public and open, and land that we do not own, but obviously we are required to specifically consult with that group. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think the key to this here is the definition itself. I think it's any publicly accessible space. So yes, if you have a pitch that's community asset transferred, it still is a community public space. So yes, this will still impact on that. If it's a nature reserve where the public can access and dogs are allowed, yes, it will apply to that area. So it's any public accessible space that you can go with your animal. And what I must say as well is, of course, as Councillor Spanswick has said, the majority of pet owners are very responsible. But this is to just tighten up, really, I suppose, and keep our communities clean. So if our enforcement officers are out and they do see dogs fouling and or owners, dogs are out of control, they can ask for dogs to be put on the lead, they can ask for feces to be picked, but they can also ask, does an owner have a bag, a feces bag on them? Because it's a duty if you have a dog to carry those removal bags, so you are able to remove any dog fouling. So it is where the extent to which I have a team of 8, it's an extent to which they can cover the borough, but I'm sure it will improve the situation should the consultation go forward and we implement. But thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Janine. Councillor Farr, please.
Sorry, Janine, just for clarifying, really. So cat transfer, if you have access to the field, is public space. So what if it's locked? Because I know Griffin Park is being cat transferred, but it's locked.
Yeah,
Janine,
if
please.
Any space is accessible by the public, it's accessible in the day, so this would apply. In the evening when it's locked, there's nobody in the space. So yeah, indeed. But during the day, if the facility is open and publicly accessible, it is part of this order, Councillor Farr.
Thank you for that, Councillor Farr. And of course, at the heart of this is about protecting the public, isn't it? Because dog mess does come at a risk. We know that there are cases of adults and children being infected by it, and there's over 100 cases of toxocariasis diagnosed every year in the UK. That is as a result of that, and that is one of the reasons why this has been brought forward, and we'll be interested now to see what the response of the public is. I'm sure Councillor Spanswick will be encouraging stakeholders, but particularly members of the public, to respond to this, because it does introduce new controls, but it is about protecting people from those risks, and also the requirement to keep dogs on a lead where directed. That is also a recognition of the fact that sadly there are a small number of cases, and it is a very small number of cases, but they do happen every year, of loss of human life as a result of attacks by dogs. And we have to reflect that in our proposals, and we'll be interested to see what the response is of the community and the public to those proposals. So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with those recommendations? Okay, thank you. So the next report is another report from the Corporate Director for Communities. I think it's your last report today, Janine, and it is on proposals to improve tennis courts and the use of the Community Asset Transfer Fund. Janine, please.
Oh, thank you, Leader. Well, I think the Communities Director is delighted to bring this report forward and in front of you today, Leader, because the purpose is to seek approval from Cabinet to allocate monies from the Community Asset Transfer Fund to enable tennis courts in 4 different areas across our borough to be refurbished in partnership with the Lawn Tennis Association. So the Lawn Tennis Association are going to offer us a substantial grant of over £300,000, and we just have to match fund that going forward. The second bit of the report is to extend the scope of the CAT fund to include the development and refurbishment of assets and facilities currently or formerly maintained by the Parks Department that can't readily be subject to CAT due to issues such as land title, where a minimum of 25% external match funding has been secured. So if I just give you a little bit of background into this and to take you through some of the more pertinent pieces of the Cabinet report, Leader. So this is all about tennis court improvement across our borough. Now, the Lawn Tennis Association Parks Refurbishment Programme will refurbish park tennis courts across the UK because they've received 21.9 million of funding directly from the UK government, and they've added an additional 8.4 million from the Lawn Tennis Foundation to deliver this programme by March 2024. So it's within the next year. So this funding is aimed at public parks and working in partnership with local authorities. Now, the LTA, the Lawn Tennis Association, have assessed tennis facilities under the responsibility of Bridgend Council. And they've determined that there are 4 viable sites that we have that should be resurfaced based on their condition surveys and on an assessment of demand. And I'm really pleased to say that these are within Mystake Welfare Park, where there are 3 tennis courts they'd like to refurbish. Within Griffin Park in Porthcawl, they would like to look at refurbishing 2 tennis courts. In Caidi Park in Ogmore Vale, there are 2 courts there they'd like to look at as part of this programme. And also at Haylerkew, near Pencode, there are 2 courts on the playing fields there. Now, the proposed works have been assessed by the contractors appointed under the Lawn Tennis Association framework, and the LTA funding panel have confirmed that the costs and suggested contributions from BCBC at their meeting held on the 10th of February this year. Now, the table in section 3.2 sets out the funding arrangements, but it is proposed in this table to spend over £519,000 on these tennis courts across our borough, with £328,237 invested from the UK Government Lawn Tennis Association and 191,000, just over 191,000 match funded from BCBC from our CAT investment fund. And what you can see in the programme is the location, in the table, is the location of the tennis courts, the number of them, the total cost, and the contribution of the LTA funding compared to BCBC. And you can see in particular that at Caidi Park in Ogmore Vale, it's been paid for in its entirety by the LTA. So the proposed tennis court improvements would need to be commissioned by BCBC under a framework agreement, and that has been arranged by the Lawn Tennis Association and assessed by our procurement and legal services team to determine compliance with our procurement regulations. Now, paragraphs 3.6 to 3.10 in the report set out the CAT investment fund details, but we have Cabinet discussed these a number of times. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just jump straight on to section 4 of the report. Now, this discusses what the match funding arrangements are. So in brief, the LTA is proposing that they refurbish the tennis courts at Maesteg Welfare Park, Caerdy Park, Hayler Kew, and these three should be undertaken by the end of March, early April this year. So straight away, those works will be undertaken, or by the end of the year. The Council has requested, however, that the potential development of new tennis courts at Griffin Park should be delayed until September 2023, so that the community engagement and planning permissions can be progressed. Now, the proposed refurbishments have been discussed at a recent CAT steering group with a clear willingness for us to apply a financial contribution or match funding towards the tennis courts themselves. Now, the financial contribution required from BCBC does not fit the current criteria for the CAT fund, as set out in this report, as tennis courts are not one of the prioritised areas for CAT. And furthermore, no financial savings would be achieved should the Parks Department cease to maintain these facilities, because they are managed currently by third parties such as Tennis Wales. However, under such an arrangement, the third party would retain any income from hire and be responsible for day-to-day maintenance of the facilities. Now, the tennis courts would be enclosed by fencing and accessed by a key-coded gate. However, as a guide, family passes currently cost £39 per annum, and free usage and coaching would then be available. So the Lawn Tennis Association has required any third party taking on day-to-day running of the tennis facilities under its park refurbishment programme to provide a commitment to run free organised activities on a Saturday and a Sunday at 10 a.m. and this is linked to a free offer being developed, and we think this will be part of the proposed improvements across our sites. Now, with regard to Griffin Park, the land where the two existing tennis courts are located is required for the proposed new road development, which forms part of the Porthcawl Waterfront Regeneration Project. Now, the Council has previously confirmed its commitment that replacement tennis courts will be in place prior to the old facilities being decommissioned. And the LTA has agreed in principle to provide funding of just over £53,000 for the new facilities, which are currently estimated to cost £190,000. So we're going to be able to site those new facilities in a different location and bring the new tennis courts forward before we decommission the old. Now, the LTA are also requesting a contribution of only £3,900 for the improvements at Hayler Kew, and it's proposed that this can come from our Parks Department revenue budget. Now, the proposed LTA funding of just over £328,000 equates to 1% of total budget funding for the LTA Parks refurbishment programme. Now, that's the whole of the UK, so it doesn't sound a lot, but 1% to Bridgend is considerable when you consider how many people have applied to this fund itself. Now, if we look at extending the scope of the CAT fund, if I could just take you through this quickly before we move to recommendations. Now, the Parks Department may have day-to-day management responsibility for assets, such as green spaces, that are not formally owned by the Council, because historically they've not been adopted following transfer from property developers, or sometimes they're not registered with the Land Registry. Now, such assets can't currently be considered for CATs, even when day-to-day responsibility for manage them are transferred to a community group. Now, the transfer of these assets may only achieve very small financial savings to the Parks Department and also have little scope for investment under the Council's capital programme. And as such, what often happens is they fall into disrepair and possibly they get decommissioned to the detriment of the community and future generations. So the CAT steering group have a wish to extend the scope of the CAT fund to include the development and refurbishment of assets and facilities that are currently or formerly maintained by the Parks Department that cannot be subject to a full CAT, where a minimum of 25% external match funding has been secured. This approach, Leader and Cabinet, will assist in ensuring that such assets can be improved for the benefit of the community, particularly when BCBC is able to work in partnership with town and community councils, for instance, the governing bodies of sports and Sports Wales in securing external funding. So if I can take you to the recommendations in the report, Cabinet, there are 4 recommendations. The first is to extend the scope of the CAT fund, as I've just described, and the next 3 are to approve the allocations for the Maesteg Welfare Park, for Griffin Park, and for the Hale-Q playing fields, so that we can improve the tennis facilities across the borough. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Janine, for that comprehensive report. Councillor Spancer, please.
Thank you, Leader. And what a great report to have before us, recommending and proposing over £500,000 investment in tennis, which is something perhaps we haven't looked at enough in the past in all authorities, tennis facilities, and there are some marvellous facilities in the Bridgend area. There's a tennis club and there's a proposal for Island Farm Tennis Academy. And some may ask why these sites, but this is based on the Lawn Tennis Association doing their assessment across the county borough of where sites are suitable for investment. And they've covered the valley areas. They haven't covered the Garra Valley, but the Garra Valley already has a facility which I think was subject to a CAT transfer and has been upgraded. And we have Maesteg in here. It's disappointing to note on social media that one of the opposition members from Maesteg criticised investment in Maesteg Welfare Park, which is disappointing. I think we would have thought the people, the opposition councillors in Maesteg, at least the one, would welcome £200,000 investment in Maesteg Welfare Park. I personally do. I think it's great to see this across the county borough. The Griffin Park one is a little bit more expensive because it's not refurbishing the court, it's building it 2 new courts from scratch. But our 991,000 brings in the 328, over £500,000. But on top of that, Jean, you've covered the fact that the Lawn Tennis Association, through a third party, will look to manage these courts, because maybe that's something we're not able to do these days as far as promoting tennis and providing coaching and activities. And it says there about in paragraph 4.2 about £39 per annum, as an example, for a family pass, as well as given this commitment to run day-to-day tennis facility, the pre-organised activities on Saturdays and Sundays at 10 o'clock. So it really opens up the opportunity for families to get out there as well, enjoy the open spaces and our facilities, and for less than £1 a week have access to free use of the tennis facilities. So great investment. I can't wait to see it in place. Some will start soon, hopefully, if we approve this report today, and we'll have new tennis courts, refurbished tennis courts, in line before we get to Wimbledon. So we'll be glad to see some official openings, some activities, and maybe the leader get his tennis racket out and we can have a game. So I'd like to move recommendations in paragraph 9 and welcome the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Spanzik. And I know how excited you are about these proposals as a big champion of outdoor sports, and of course we've made big strides now in terms of the sport being a very inclusive sport, open to people of all backgrounds, of all ages, of all genders and identities, and this is very much part of that effort by the Lawn Tennis Association and by Tennis Wales to encourage more people to participate in this sport. Councillor Farr, please.
Thank you, Janine, for the report. I think it's really, really exciting that, you know, we're going to have so much money invested in Bridgend. The fact that people ask, what does BCBC do for us? Well, there we are. They're going to be refurbishing 4 tennis courts. You've already mentioned the Griffin Park, so this is going to be part of the refurbishment, because Griffin Park was part of the regen plan. We made a commitment that we were going to replace the tennis court at Griffin Park, so this funding will go towards us keeping that promise.
Janine, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, in Griffin Park, as Councillor Spanswick has also supported, is that we will replace with brand new courts at a different location. So this is just not refurbishment, it's brand new all-weather courts in Griffin Park in a different location, and then we will decommission the existing poor condition courts because that is where we would like to put the road into the new development. And it's something that we promised the community. We gave an assurance when we were talking about Porthcawl and the compulsory purchase, and also when we looked at the master planning for Porthcawl. When we spoke to communities and when we spoke to the tennis club, we made a commitment that we would replace those facilities with brand new all-weather courts ahead of us looking at removing the old. And so I'm thrilled that we've been able to do this in association with the Lawn Tennis Association. They're going to spec the courts, so we know that they will be the highest competition level all-weather courts for us. And of course we've benefited from over £300,000 worth of funding. So we are thrilled that we can take our promise, keep our promise, and take this forward. So thank you, Councillor Farr.
Thanks, Councillor Farr. Thanks, Janine. Councillor Good is next, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Janine, for the report. Just to add my voice to Councillor Farr and Councillor Spanswick's comments, I think this is a really, really positive thing, especially for 3 areas north of the M4 within our borough, which is tremendously welcome, including within my own valley in Ogmore. I'm really hopeful that we can encourage a lot of residents in Nantymoel to take up a racket. I won't, I'm dreadful at it, but nonetheless, I hope everyone else does. And I think it's important to reflect in this, and I know it doesn't necessarily sound a lot when you look at the numbers, but 1% of this entire fund is being spent in our borough. And I think when we consider that this is a UK-wide project and that we do not have 1% of our population within the borough, it is really reassuring to see the commitment from such a major sports organisation in providing funding for our borough. I just wanted to ask Janine, if I may, about what work we could look at in order to make sure that these developments are working in partnership with our friends at Halo, who provide our leisure services across the borough, and as well with our community councils in terms of how they have a wider offer of leisure within our communities, such as 3G pitches and other CAT projects, which I know the director will be aware of. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Good. An important question there about those partnerships that I know are in place, but we're always looking to strengthen and build on those partnerships. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Good. Before I answer your question, I would say, I know you said you weren't very good at tennis, but you can go down to if we approve the report, to the Saturday and Sunday sessions at 10 a.m. and perhaps improve your skills with a qualified coach. But yes, it's incredible, we joke here, but it's incredibly important that we work alongside the existing leisure provision to enhance the offer. And that's something that we want to do, are doing, have a great partnership, and if this can strengthen it further, so be it. We have to work with those community councils, with those people that have done a CAT transfer already, and of course with one of our main commercial operators, Halo, who operate leisure for us. Incredibly important for well-being, an important part of our corporate plan going forward, but not just to balance that, but to enjoy the outdoors and the open space that the borough has to offer. We'd like to go a little bit further than just sporting facilities and get people out walking into nature reserves and enjoying the borough holistically as well. But yes, please be assured that we work tirelessly. I know Andrew Thomas in Claire Marchant's team is a key person, a key link into the particularly into Halo and into these clubs. And then I've got Guy Smith who looks after the CAT transfers for us. So yeah, very good point, well made, Councillor Good. Thank you.
And can I echo appreciation of the officers? Thanks to colleagues for their work on this, because it is a remarkable achievement to secure this level of investment, because we certainly don't have 1% of the population in Bridgend. We don't have 650,000 people here, So it's a mark of the work that we've put in, and also that growing and developing partnership. I know the Lawn Tennis Association have been impressed by the work that is been undertaken by organisations like Bridgend Tennis Club, the exciting plans for Island Farm, the work of the club in the Garrow Valley that's already very successful. So this builds on that. So please pass on our thanks to officers. A really exciting time for the sport in the county borough. You seconded it, so is everyone in agreement with the recommendations, please, colleagues? Thank you very much. And thank you, Janine. You can draw breath now, and I will invite the corporate director, the Director for Finance, Chief Finance Officer, to present the next report, and that is on the result of tender of annual insurance policies. Caris, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. The purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet of the result of the recent exercise to re-tender those council insurance policies that were due to be renewed at this time. Approval is also sought from Cabinet to authorise Marsh UK Limited as the Council's appointed insurance broker to accept cover for the policies on behalf of the Council. In October last year, Cabinet approved the commencement of a tender process for all annual insurance policies due to commence on the 31st of March this year, and this process has now been completed. The received tenders have been evaluated in line with the tender specifications. The specifications ask tenderers to consider two long-term agreement options, the first for a 3-year period and the second for a 3-year period with an option to extend for a further 2 years. Cabinet is requested to approve the acceptance of the quotations as outlined for you this afternoon in Table 2 of the report for a period of 3 years plus an option to extend for a further 2 years. If agreed, these new arrangements will result in an annual saving of £116,000, and I would stress for Cabinet that this is not a reduction in the level of the insurance cover that the Council would have going forward. Therefore, if I may, Leader, I just take you to the recommendation in Section 9, where it's recommended that Cabinet approves the acceptance of the quotations in paragraph 4.4 with a 3-year long-term agreement and an option to extend for a further 2 years, placed through Marsh UK Limited as the Council's appointed insurance broker. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Caris. Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you, Leader. And yes, I want to echo Caris's comments there. This is a pleasant report and a pleasant surprise to find that we have a reduced premium for a very similar cover. So it certainly is a good news report. I'd like to thank Karen Davis, so our insurance officer. She's done a sterling job in making sure that we've had a very good deal here. So happy to move the report, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams, and our thanks to the insurance officer. It is good news to have a seconder for
Second report.
Thank you, Councillor Spandrick. Is everyone in agreement, please? Yes, thank you, colleagues. So we'll now receive the second report of the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change, and this is on non-domestic rates and the proposal for discretionary relief on retail, leisure and hospitality rates. Caris, please.
Thank you, Leader. As you said, the purpose of this report is to seek approval this afternoon to adopt the Welsh Government's retail, leisure and hospitality rates relief scheme for the coming financial year. Welsh Government has announced the temporary extension of the rates relief scheme for 2023-2024, which would support eligible occupied properties by offering a discount of 75% on their non-domestic rate bills for properties which fall within the retail, leisure and hospitality sector. The scheme will apply to all eligible businesses. However, the relief will be capped, subject to a cap on the amount each business can claim across Wales. That cap has been set at £110,000, and all businesses are required to make a declaration that the amount of relief that they are seeking across Wales does not exceed that cap when applying to individual local authorities. Details regarding those premises that are eligible for this scheme are shown for you in Appendix A. Broadly, the premises included are occupied shops, pubs and restaurants, gyms, performance venues and hotels. This retail, leisure and hospitality rates relief scheme will run alongside the small business rates relief scheme, which is awarded automatically where a property has a rateable value under £12,000. There are currently around 3,200 businesses that will receive the small business rates relief in the coming year in Bridgend. It is estimated that there will be in the region of 940 eligible businesses across the borough that could potentially benefit from having to pay only 25% of their non-domestic rates under this new scheme during the coming year. No businesses can automatically receive this relief, so we will be putting out communications via our website and our social media platforms if this is agreed this afternoon. The updated forms will be put on the Council's website so that businesses can apply from the 1st of April. And also information is being shared with the Town Centre Manager in order to bring this scheme to the attention of businesses in Bridgend. So if I may, Leader, I just refer you to the recommendations at paragraph 9 of this report, that Cabinet adopts the Welsh Government's non-domestic rate relief, leisure and hospitality rate relief scheme for 2023-2024 as detailed for you in Appendix A. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that. Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And thank you to the Welsh Government on this one for supporting our leisure and hospitality industry. Businesses have to come forward and claim this for the reasons that Carys have just outlined. So I would encourage members to when you're at the local pubs or restaurants, make sure that you mention that this relief is available to we can get to that 940 potential eligible businesses across the county borough. Happy to move the report, Leader.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Williams, and I'd also like to place on record our thanks to Welsh Government for making that package of support available for businesses across Wales. I think it totaled over £460 million over 2 years, and it is important because some of those businesses are still struggling. Thank you for explaining what steps we'll take to make sure that businesses do know about the scheme, and I'd once again take the opportunity to remind those businesses that this support will be available and to encourage other members, as Councillor Williams has said, to promote the scheme within their community, because we don't want any businesses to miss out, and there are a lot of businesses that can potentially benefit from this scheme of 940 businesses. That's a lot of businesses in Bridgend County Borough, and of course this is in addition to the small business rates relief, and that benefits over 3,000 businesses in the county borough. Councillor Farr is next, please.
Thank you, Carys, for the report. I'm really pleased to hear that we are going to write out to everybody to inform them, because sometimes you just forget about it. So I'm really pleased that we're going to write to all the businesses to let them know they can claim this money. And I'll second the report, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Farr. So is everyone in agreement with the recommendations, please? Thank you, colleagues, and we will now receive the third report to the Chief Officer of Finance, Performance and Change, and that is on temporary accommodation for homeless people. Carys, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval from Cabinet to suspend the Council's contract procedure rules in order to secure temporary accommodation for homelessness cases to meet the Council's statutory housing duty. Members will be aware that at the start of the pandemic, Welsh Government introduced an all-in approach to homelessness and directed local authorities that no one was to be without accommodation. To meet this requirement at the time, the use of temporary accommodation was expanded to meet the needs of people presenting as homeless. In October 2022, a new category of priority needs came into force, and under this category, a person who is homeless is to be provided with temporary accommodation. All of these changes have significantly increased the demand for temporary accommodation, and the report details that for you this afternoon. So in March 2020, there were 83 households in temporary accommodation, whereas by the middle of February this year, those numbers had increased to 253 households. Due to the ongoing changes to the requirements to provide this accommodation, it has been difficult for the Council to plan long-term service requirements. Therefore, to meet this increased requirement, the Council meets it by the use of temporary accommodation, using a range of different settings, and these are outlined for you in paragraph 4.2 of this afternoon's report. The providers of this accommodation do tend to be small businesses or individual entities, which has resulted in the long-term procurement of this service being quite challenging. It's therefore proposed that, to enable the continuation of the current arrangements, a further service level agreement for 12 months is entered into with existing accommodation providers. I just wanted to reassure members that work is ongoing to secure more suitable temporary accommodation and also more permanent move-on accommodation. So a new homelessness strategy, a housing prospectus and a rapid rehousing transitional plan will be presented to Cabinet very soon, which will outline proposals to reduce the level of temporary accommodation used, and would look to expand on the existing accommodation and housing related support projects that we have, to progress some capital projects or access whatever funding sources become available, to also work with private landlords to provide additional accommodation where possible, and also to work in partnership with other statutory and third sector organisations to ensure that housing related support for households is maintained and expanded where needs identify a gap in provision. So therefore, if I may, Leader, I would just take members to the recommendations at paragraph 9 of this report, namely that Cabinet suspends the relevant part of the Council's contract procedure rules with regards to the requirement to tender for a contract, and delegates to the Group Manager Housing to enter into service level agreements with accommodation providers for a period of up to 12 months in order to continue the provision of additional temporary accommodation as necessary to meet our statutory duties, and also delegates authority to the Group Manager Housing to approve the final terms of the service level agreements on behalf of the Council and to arrange execution of those agreements on behalf of the Council. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Caris. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Caris, for the report. Cabinet members will be aware we've discussed the housing crisis at length. We're all aware of the situation we're in, and I'm sorry to say that it only seems to be getting more difficult and more difficult to find accommodation for long-term and temporary. And I don't see that abating anytime soon, unfortunately. This report represents a sticking plaster, I'll be honest, and it's not where I would like us to be as the Cabinet member responsible for housing. The team is aware of that. However, we are looking for a longer term solution, and we are looking to bring forward a procurement framework in the coming year that can work with the Council's procedures more effectively. The reality is this is having to be done because procurement rules within a council was never built to have service level agreements with individual holiday homeowners or individual Airbnb hosts. But sadly, that is the reality in which we find ourselves today. The team is very hard pushed, and I want to thank them for all of their hard work. They really work endlessly for the people in our borough who need housing. And as a result of that, some of the strategic work that perhaps we would like to do more quickly becomes secondary to providing warm, safe and secure accommodation for the people within our borough. So I would just like to thank Caris again and the team again for that. I would like to reassure the Cabinet and to other members listening that we are looking for longer term solutions. I am hopeful that within the housing strategy, when we present it to you, we will have some different views and different ways of doing things that can help us mitigate this crisis. But for the moment, I ask for our support to move this report. So I would like to formally move the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Good. Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. I am more reassured now I've listened to the Cabinet member. I do have some concerns around the social value of our spend, particularly in relation to private landlords. I think we need to monitor our RSLs really closely. They are there to deliver for us. And I would also like some reassurance from Caris about the challenge that we have available to us in relation to our RSLs specifically.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Caris, please.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Leader, for that question. We do, just to reassure you really, that we do work closely with the registered social landlords across Bridgend, and they have worked with us in trying to find accommodation to help us meet this increase in demand. As I outlined when I introduced the report, we've seen an exceptional increase in this particular service and the demand for it. The registered social landlords do work hard with us to try and do this, but I know that Councillor Good is also asking us to set up better working relationships with them so that we can work in tandem really with them with regards to meeting the needs that we have for this particular cohort of people, which has developed so significantly in the last 3 years. So that is work that we also plan to do now in the next couple of months, together with the longer term planning that I've already outlined.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to second the report, Leader.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader. And of course, the context of this is everything, isn't it? And that new approach, and it was a new approach that Welsh Government led on at the start of the pandemic, that no one is left out, is an approach that we all support. We don't want anyone on the streets, but obviously we didn't, we weren't able to create additional accommodation overnight, were we? So that created additional pressures, and those pressures have continued to increase, and the demand has continued to increase. And it is stark and sobering to see that statistic about the number of people in temporary accommodation. And I want to take the opportunity to thank the team for their commitment. I know and at some times, too many times, they've worked day and night to provide and secure that accommodation for people that literally have nowhere else to go. And if that requires us to suspend parts of the contract procedure rules, then we have to do it, because we cannot see people on the streets. We have a paramount duty to support homeless people. So I'm also supportive of the recommendations, and I know that the Cabinet member, together with officers, are very focused on what additional steps we can take, because there's been a lot of work already, additional steps we can take to build the level of a supply of affordable and temporary accommodation, which is what we need to try and tackle this problem, this challenge. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement, please? Thank you, and thank you once again, Caris. We'll now receive the first report of the Corporate Director for Education and Family Support, and it is on the Estyn inspection outcomes for Arfnefelen, Pill, Canelli and Bryn Melyn primary schools. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Leader. For the purpose of the recording, I'm Lindsay Harvey. I'm the Corporate Director of Education and Family Support. The purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet the outcomes of the recent Estyn inspection visits to Arfnefelen, Pyle, Cornelly and Bryn Melyn primary schools. All 4 primary schools were last inspected in the period of June 2012 to June 2014 under the old Estyn inspection framework. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Estyn suspended inspections across all schools for a 2-year period from March 2020 to February 22. During the spring and summer term 2022, Estyn piloted Estyn inspection arrangements to support renewal and reform in education in Wales. The new inspection reports no longer include summative grade-ins, but instead detail how well providers are helping a child to learn. In the current Estyn reporting format, schools are judged as being in one of the following categories: no follow-up, Estyn review, significant improvement required, or special measures required. During the summer and autumn term 2022, Estin visited 4 primary schools in Bridgend, and Estin judged all 4 schools inspected during this period as not requiring any follow-up. Generally, the recommendations align to the areas of development that have been identified by the schools, reflecting the effective self-evaluation processes in each school. The local authority, along with Central South Consortium, will support each school in drawing up action plans to show how the recommendations would be addressed in each setting. Leader, I'm also pleased to report that Cornelly Primary School was asked to produce an effective practice case study on its work in relation to how the school has supported the development of pupils' understanding of financial awareness for dissemination on the Estin's website. The report is currently available. So on that positive note, Leader, I need the recommendations of paragraph 9.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Councillor Blundell, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Lindsay, for the report. Firstly, I just want to take this opportunity to thank teachers, students, parents, carers and governors, because without them and their hard work, these inspection reports wouldn't be as positive as they are. There are, of course, recommendations for each school, and these will form part of the school's action plans going forward to continue their professional development. I just wanted to pick out some of the highlights from the Estin reports for Cabinet. In Aberdyfellen, the pupils were found to be well motivated to learn and collaborate enthusiastically on interesting topics. They enjoy helping leaders to make decisions about improving their school and are very proud of the important changes they have made. The leadership team were also praised for creating a good team ethos among staff who successfully support pupils' well-being. In Pyle, the inspectors found that teachers at the school had strong strategic direction and provided a range of learning experiences which engage pupils, interest and motivate them. The school provision for developing pupils' core skills, including their use of the Welsh language, is another notable strength. Nearly all pupils are making strong progress in developing their use of spoken Welsh and enjoyment in hearing the language. As the director said, Cornelly Primary School has been asked to produce an interesting and innovative practice case study on the work in the school in development of pupils' understanding of financial awareness. And as the director said, this report is widely available and it even came up in scrutiny yesterday. So I know BATMET members are very interested in this as well. And hopefully we'll be able to highlight that more for parents as we go on. And in Bremennin Primary School, it is a happy, inclusive school that places a high priority on the well-being of its pupils. It provides a calm haven where pupils blossom. Behaviour of all pupils in both in and around school is exemplary. I think they're all fantastic reports, and I think I'm proud to bring this to you today. So on that very positive note today, Leader, I'll move the report.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Blundell. It is very positive, and I wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate all the schools involved. I have to say that there are lots of other local authorities in Wales where they're not in the position where they have no schools in special measures, which we do not, and certainly schools not requiring the level of follow-up that we see in other local authorities. That is, of course, as you've described, Councillor Blundell, down to the excellent leadership of schools by head teachers, by governing bodies, the effort and commitment of teachers, other staff and parents and of course pupils. But I would also take the opportunity to thank our small but dedicated group of staff and staff in Central South Consortium that continue to provide support to all of those schools. So the recommendation has been moved by Councillor Blundell. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you for that, Councillor Farr. And of course, what we will do is we will share that case study that Estin have asked Cornelly Primary School to produce. Sure, you can confirm, the director, that is around the credit union. So perhaps you could explain just a little more for listeners what that involves, Lindsay. Thank you.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, it's an excellent piece of work that's been going on since 2015. Over 60 members are now signed up within the school community, working very closely with the governing body and also with parents in the local community to set up a really thriving savings club within the school. And what the school has done particularly well is they've integrated this within the school setting, so learners learn with their families with regard to effective financial management. So a good news story all round. I'm also very pleased to say they've also won an award for this, and it's been showcased not just on the Eston site, but on other sites of Factors Good Practice in financial education across Wales. So really good news, Leader. I'm more than happy to share this, and perhaps through you we can put this out in a press release.
I think that's a very good idea, and my thanks to you for your leadership as well, and to Councillor Blundell for that leadership together in terms of the outcomes we are seeing in our schools in all the Eston reports that are being published. So recommendations being moved and seconded. Everyone in agreement? Yep. Thank you, colleagues. Now I am going to actually pause the meeting for a short comfort break, because we have been going for some time, and I've had a request. So we will return at 4:20, and we will then receive the next report from the Corporate Director for Education and Family Support. So it is a short break. 8 minutes. I'll extend it to 22 minutes past 4 then.